call the Standing Committee Legislative and Regulatory of the City of Elkhorn to order. It's 3:03 on Wednesday, June 25th, 2025. Roll call, please.
Ron Dunwoody.
Here.
Peter Harvey.
Here.
Scott McClory.
Here. We have one item on the agenda today, the hearing before the committee as requested by Time Bomb Investments, LLC, doing business as Jackrabbit Fizz, 11 East Waller Street, Elkhorn, Wisconsin, on the city's notice of intention not to renew the alcohol license held by it and/or consideration and possible action on a proposed agreement as set forth in stipulated findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommendation. We will be going into a closed session, and I have to read this. Closed session, the Legislative and Regulatory Committee may entertain a motion to go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute Section 19.85.
Mr. Chairperson?
Pardon?
The lead's calling you.
Yep, sorry, I apologize for the rude interruption. I would recommend, before the body consider going into closed session, that we hear from city staff, including Special Counsel Attorney Todd Terry, related to a potential stipulation that they would like to present to the committee.
And that is what we'll do.
Okay, thank you. You may not need to go into closed session, but we could certainly do that if the committee so desires. I think after hearing from Attorney Terry and from Rebecca as the clerk, as well as any of the other city staff that are present there today.
Thank you very much. As always, your advice is spot on, and we appreciate it, Elaine.
Well, you're welcome. And then just to clarify our roles today, so Attorney Terry is representing from the city's perspective, city staff, the police department, and the clerk's office with respect to the complaint that had been signed by one of the members of the police department. I'm sorry, his last name is escaping me at this moment, as well as the intent, notice of intent not to renew. And then our role today, because we have to split those roles, is to advise the committee as counsel for the committee on what's being presented to them today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Todd Terry, I am serving as special counsel for today's purposes on behalf of the city. As you can see, Ms. Earhart, as the agent for the licensee, is here as well. What has transpired, and I can go into as much detail as you want, but what I would like to do is present each of the three committee members with a proposed stipulation for findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommendations. And the genesis of that, as Attorney Ekus laid out, was Sergeant Croak's sworn complaint, which if any of you don't have a copy, I'm certainly happy to provide that. Really the essence of that is two particular violations that came to Sergeant Croak's attention, one being essentially Ms. Earhart and Jackrabbit Fizz, or I should say Time Bomb Investments, LLC, purchasing alcohol from a non-wholesaler, basically off the rack. Ms. Earhart did admit to that. She has stipulated to that fact as well, and the stipulation I'll present to you when I shut up and stop talking in a moment. The second prong or second violation is untrue statements on her application, and that really went to a conviction. I believe it was under local ordinance. It ended up being a conviction for retail theft, if I'm not mistaken. I would tell the committee that that in and of itself, even if it were disclosed, would not be a disqualifying conviction, but that was an oversight by Ms. Earhart. I'm just going to distribute to you the proposed, well, I shouldn't say proposed, they've been signed by Ms. Earhart, stipulated findings of fact and conclusions of law and recommendations.
Okay.
If you have an extra one, I'll take it.
Thank you. So the goal, and obviously it's up to this committee to do what it will with the stipulated findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommendation. It is really your recommendation, but it's subject to your review and approval. And it lays out, obviously, the agreement between the parties, the city and Ms. Earhart as the agent as to the findings, lays out those findings and how they apply to the applicable local ordinance and or state statute. And then there are recommendations that myself on behalf of the city have entered into with Ms. Earhart. Obviously, you are not bound by those recommendations, but looking at the violations here in comparison with your local code, the points that are to be assessed out of this license, if and when it is renewed here at the end of the month, would come out with 175 points. That equates to the recommended penalty within there of not only the demerit points, but a 10-day suspension to be served. And I won't go through in detail how it's to be served, but essentially in 2-day blocks, commencing July 7th, at Ms. Earhart's selection of what day those suspension days are being served, and those have to be completed by August 7th, I believe it was. The one thing that I did speak with Ms. Earhart about, would just ask her to confirm, is she did confirm for me that this establishment, is closed on Mondays and Tuesdays, and she agrees that those days cannot be utilized for any suspension dates. Did I recite that correctly, Jody?
Yes.
Okay. So happy to answer any questions if you want, happy to go into greater detail, whatever you desire.
Elaine, you're muted if you're trying to speak.
I'll start over. So the members of the committee, the intention of this stipulation is to be able to dispense of a hearing because it presents the facts and basis upon which the city would have looked to not renew the license. And based on prior conversations with the committee, there was an indication that the committee was receptive to resolving this with the stipulation with the licensee. So that is what's being presented to the committee today to be able to dispense with the hearing. As you can see, this stipulation provides for that suspension that Attorney Terry just described for the committee, and then includes that recommendation. So from the standpoint of if the committee were to approve this stipulation, I provided Rebecca with a draft of a recommended form of motion. And I'm certainly, we can go over that, but I want to pause for a second to see if the committee has any specific questions related to what's been proposed to them this afternoon.
Well, Scott, you and Peter, you all read the, everything before the complainant. Any
Right.
discussion, any questions on
Not for me.
Peter?
No.
I have none either. Are we-
Make a motion?
If you would, Mr. Chairman, sorry to interrupt.
No.
I think Ms. Earhart would just like to say something, is what she's advising. I can't advise you.
I think that a lot of it is a misunderstanding, but I know that when I got audited, I was not there at the time, and when she left the sheet of all of the bottles, and I did end up finding every single invoice for that. There was 2 of them that were put up on top because they were 2 years or older. I did call her like 3 times and left messages, but she has not returned my calls, so I wasn't sure on how to go about that. But I do have my invoices for that. The only other thing I want to say is I did have a receipt there. I just, and this is just through other people, I thought that you could, on a whim of an emergency, you could go to the liquor store and buy a couple bottles. Obviously, I don't buy any of my bottles from the liquor store. I get them from the distributor. But I think that there's a gray area in this, and the reason why I thought that is because I heard the Cabernet president say that. And so I had his phone number and just, I texted him and I just said, hey, what is I'm drawing a blank, what is the rule on liquor and beer sales? And he told me that you could buy 12 bottles of liquor. And that's, my point is that I think a lot of it's a gray area with a lot of people in the bars, because I did speak to a few of them, and a lot of them really do think that you could go and buy, like, on a whim, a bottle here, like a bottle there. I think it was passed like a year ago, maybe.
I don't believe that is true, but.
Okay, yeah, I mean, so I think that like I said, it's just a little misunderstanding, and I'm guilty for it. Obviously, I'm gonna pay the fine for it, but I just think that it is a gray area for a lot of the other bars. As for the pack that I turned in for the liquor license, that also was a little bit of a misunderstanding. So when Officer Crow came to my house, I was a little confused on what he was talking about, and I think that he might have been pointing to the wrong one. So when he was questioning me, he was pointing to the one that said the businesses, which I answered that the businesses have not had any convictions. When he left, I was a little thrown off by it, and I remember kind of filling it out, so I went back to my packet, and I recalled, so when I came to turn in that packet that day, I got a guy pulled out in front of me, and I got in a car accident. So I was 5 minutes late here, but I called and told them I was gonna be 5 minutes late. So she met me, and I was like, it was one section, and it was about the amusement machines that I did not fill out because I didn't know the description, and she was like, oh, that's okay, just why don't you keep that, fill it out later and turn it in. And then I realized on the back that it does say, since your 17th birthday, have you ever been convicted of any felonies or misdemeanor? Which I did answer yes on this one, I just never turned it in, and I had it all filled out. I think what the misunderstanding is when he came to my house, he was asking about, he was pointing to the business one, so I was confused. And then I realized that there is another section that asked it again, and it did say something about, and I didn't realize that it was just talking about traffic. It said that has to do with alcohol related, but they were just talking about the traffic one. So I did answer it incorrectly, but again, I think that was just a misunderstanding.
And just from my perspective, obviously, Ms. Earhart's been very cooperative through council. Obviously, we got these stipulated findings completed without a hearing. I think listening to her, she understands, how important a lot of these questions are, and how tight and constraining both local ordinance and Chapter 125 are.
Yeah, I would never intentionally do something to hurt the business.
Chairman Dunwoody?
Yes.
Yep, so obviously you have a stipulation in front of you. It sounds to me that if there was some confusion, it seems to me that that probably has been clarified now, given this recent process. So you do have the stipulation in front of you. And if the committee has no other questions, we have a recommended motion, and I'll read that for the committee. And then, like I said, Rebecca has that as well. It would be a motion to approve the stipulated findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommendations, and to recommend to the Common Council to incorporate the approval into an order that approves the renewal of the license subject to the suspension as set forth in the stipulated agreement between the parties. So that would be the recommended motion, and the committee certainly could go into closed if you felt you wanted to have some deliberation on the stipulation. So that would be at the committee's discretion.
I make that motion as stated by Elaine.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
To forego the closed session and accept the stipulation?
Yeah.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this?
I just have a clarifying statement, I guess. It's really minor, it's maybe a Scrivener's error, but Sergeant Croak is not here, and it says the complainant appeared in person without counsel at the hearing, and Captain Brandel's here, Sergeant Croak is not, and that's not what it says. So do we need to clarify that, or, like I said, it might be a Scrivener's error for lack of a better term, but,
Yeah, I'm fine with
Okay.
what you just did on the record.
okay, fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Everyone will?
And then to clarify, I also sent over to Rebecca a draft order, and it had a couple of those pieces highlighted as well. And then I think we will add into that order the, what was put on the record, that the establishment is closed on Monday and Tuesday, and so those days would not be able to be used as a suspension, but that would go ultimately in the order issued by the Common Council if approved.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. And without any other business, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming in today.